wrote it so long ago, and it's noted that as a child I believed that what they said, they could show it and prove to me without a doubt that they finally figured out our origins and who we are. That's what science was all about. But they lied about what science was, and they lied about what it does. The scientific method's clear about all of that kinds of stuff. Step one of that method: observe a natural phenomenon. Evolution debunked. Let's put an end to your insomnia.
This nigga.
Gravity!
The strategy that Wernher von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids.
This new one you're tracking, how big?
It's what we call a global killer. Nothing would survive, not even bacteria.
An asteroid some scientists call a city killer came closer to Earth than the moon this week. The scary thing is that scientists had no idea it was coming.
Now at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids, we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over, during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens, and all of it.
All of it. All of it.
The lie.
The lie. The lie.
The way he said it to me, there was no doubt in my mind that he knew something that he was too afraid to talk about.
Imagine we live on a flat fucking world. All this time we thought we lived on a round planet, huh? We have no fucking evidence to believe that we're on a round planet, only by people telling us, but we really don't know who we are, where we came from, who the fuck is our purpose here.
I'm not going to go for that. You're not going to tell me that on a round planet, though.
How do you know that? You never been out of space. You never been out of space.
You never been out of space.
So apparently the moon is 238,000 miles away. But if you just put that aside for a second and just look at the moon, perhaps you'll notice this. In this example, only the clouds close to the moon are lit up, not the clouds further away. That indicates that the moon is much, much closer than we've been told. Because if the moon were 238,000 miles away, then all the clouds should be illuminated, not just the ones closest to it. And here's an example of a schoolboy mistake. This is a famous picture from Apollo 8, which is entitled Earthrise. It was taken from above the moon's surface, looking back at the Earth. The only problem is, the Earth appears the same size as the moon appears from the Earth. But the Earth is 4 times the size of the moon. So it should have looked like this. Somebody screwed up. Now, there will be some people who still think we went to the moon. I can't believe that there are still people who think that 1969 technology went over 400,000 miles, managed to navigate to the moon using computers that were orders of magnitude less powerful than the first iPhone, passing through the immensely hazardous Van Allen radiation belts, which, by the way, NASA cannot figure out how to get through today, somehow landed on the moon, spent a delightful few days planting flags, playing golf, riding around on dune buggies, and then took off, or rather levitated off the lunar surface, only briefly nipping back to pick up the person operating the camera, and returned safely. And not just once, but 7 times. It's a fantasy. The whole thing is a fantasy. Everything you saw supposedly on the moon was in a soundstage using Stanley Kubrick's perfected front projection technology. and I'm not going to spend much time. There's plenty of evidence to show that it was completely faked. It was complete fantasy. Many of us have seen the moon appear full at various times throughout the day, as in this picture. But how can that happen? If you're standing at point C, then it's the middle of the night. Full moon, no problem. And if you're standing at point A, it's early in the morning. Certainly if you stare back at the moon in the night sky, then yes, you can see a full moon. But if you're standing at point B, which is midday, that is, the sun is directly overhead, then there isn't anywhere that the moon can be that will allow you to see it as full, because the sun will be illuminating the side of the moon that is facing away from you. So the best you'll be able to see is a sliver of the moon. Think about it next time you see the full moon during the day. Every month the moon goes through 8 distinct phases. Always the same 8, always the same order. Supposedly because of a relationship between the position of the moon relative to the position of the Earth and the Sun. So let's say it's December, and throughout the month we see the normal 8 phases of the moon. But what happens when it's June and the Earth is supposedly on the other side of the Sun? Shouldn't the phases be reversed? That's not what we see. We see the same 8 phases in the same order. We are told that the moon is also spherical, but when we look at the moon, it seems to be lit uniformly over its entire surface. But if it was a sphere reflecting the sun, then that curved surface would display a highlight, and then that light would drop off as it went round the surface. But that's not what we see. The entire moon is lit uniformly. The quality of the light from the moon is completely different from the sun's light. The sun's light is hot and it's shifted towards the yellow part of the spectrum, whereas the light from the moon is cold and more silvery. Heat is essentially infrared light. So in order for the moon to absorb the heat from the sun and not reflect it, it would have to be a deep green colour to absorb the infrared. So unless the moon is made out of green cheese, it is not reflecting the sun's light. It appears that the moon is not a sphere and it's not reflecting the sun, it is self-luminous. Also, we should be able to see a slightly different view of the moon depending on where on the globe Earth we happen to be. But this is not what we see. Doesn't matter where we are on Earth, we always seem to see the same view of the moon. Now, my friend Nolan pointed out that this is obviously a very exaggerated picture. The moon is supposedly 30 Earth diameters away from the Earth itself. But even so, that difference in position should give you a slight difference from point A to point B. But again, that's not what we see.
Houston, we have a huge problem. Spotlight! Mommy!
Sorry to tell you, the only thing that's been to space is your imagination. There is no such thing as space. There is no such thing as space.
There is no such thing as space.